This is your host, Stephen Sargeant, the Around the Coin podcast. We have Andrew McCormick. He's the head of eToro US. We talk about crypto, investing, the early days when he was at E-Trade. We talk about what the differences are between the generations and what they're putting their money into, and what are some of the parameters and risks with everything. We talk about sentiment investing and copy trading. This episode is hilarious. Andrew has lots of great energy. He has some business ideas too if you want to steal from us. And he's also a legal representative. Andrew's amazing. This is going to be such a fun podcast for those that are looking to figure out what's going on in the US when it comes to crypto, the early days of regulation, and everything in between. And we even finish off the episode with a little bit of AI and some business acumen. I hope you enjoy this one of my favorite episodes to record. This is your host, Stephen Sargeant, Around the Coin podcast. We have the head of eToro USA, Andrew McCormick. Andrew, you're super active on LinkedIn. Give us a little bit of background, and then we're going to jump deep into like when you started your career in the investment and financial services space.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. It's such a joy to be here with you today and just chat about life, finance, and everything in between. So, yeah, my name is Andrew McCormick, hang out in the Washington, D.C. area, a proud husband for almost 20 years, hard to believe, a proud dad of 4 kids, and have the joy and honor of leading the eToro US team, where we're all about just making finance more accessible and engaging for retail investors, not just in the US, but all around the world.
And you started out pretty early in your career in like the legal sector and like regulatory work at E-Trade. I think, as soon as I heard E-Trade and saw it on your profile, I'm like, oh, I remember those talking baby commercials. And you were working in like the regulatory investigation side of it. This was quite a while ago, back in 2016, 2020. Do you remember what were some of the like high level financial crime concerns or investigation concerns across the industry?
Yeah, so I had the joy of starting my career during a financial crisis, and trying to navigate that as a new lawyer, and landed at a law firm for my first 6 years and did all the spicy litigation and regulatory matters. Ironically, I was supposed to start my career as a renewable energy transactional lawyer. And then surprisingly, with the financial crisis, a lot of companies are not wanting to spend billions of dollars building wind farms, solar farms, but a lot of financial firms are getting sued. And that's how I started my career because of that. I needed a job. Companies needed help. Those first couple of years were largely focused on like financial crisis type issues, failures, things like that. Had 6 wonderful years at the law firm, but I've got a creative spirit and wanted to go in-house and work. I seem to seeing the same commercials and love the idea of going to work at the original OG fintech, E-Trade.
Right.
So jumped over, and I love the idea of not just working with lawyers all the time. In a law firm, it's great, but everybody's a lawyer, right? But at a place like E-Trade, you have brilliant people, not just in legal, but in marketing, compliance, product, and had an amazing time there. Lots of different matters, focus on the regulatory space, exams, inquiries, enforcement actions, most around trading, retail trading, issues that pop up along the way. And I think during that time, a lot of interesting retail trading issues popped up across the whole industry, right? Like we were around in January 2020 when suddenly like GameStop goes to like $1 million out of nowhere in the whole world, and Facebook, Instagram is talking about GameStop. At places like E-Trade, Robinhood, different places like that, everyone inside was talking about the same kind of issues. The regulators were talking about the same kind of issues. Congress was talking about the same kind of issues. So it was cool to be at a place like that just was so innovative, so much great history, and just wonderful people. So even though the matters were spicy at times, it was my honor and joy to defend the company and defend all of my coworkers.
I love it. And, there's still room. Sustainable energy is making a comeback. I know solar is extremely popular in the U.S.
For sure, yeah.
These guys walking around selling solar, whipping out their phones and showing their bank account because they're making some coin. I'd love to know, because you were at E-Trade until about 2020, I believe. And, even when they were, acquired by Morgan Stanley, they got into digital assets. Is that shocking to you? Was there, were they always like looking forward of what's the next innovation? How do we start more conversations around it? Especially if you're in the legal department, usually that's the first stop for, those are innovating. At least, I think that's the first stop and not the last stop.
Yeah, honestly, it was the opposite. Like I was passionate about the space. I rose my hand there and said, I want to do as much as possible in crypto. And we were definitely working on some cool stuff even back then. I know some of it is continued. And I think realistically, a lot of big traditional players, whether it's E-Trade or Morgan Stanley or lots of banks, during the last couple of years of regulatory uncertainty, litigation, everyone said, let's hang on the sidelines for a little bit before we, fully dive in and see how it all plays out. But there's definitely like some cool stuff going on at those places, I'm sure. And I think in the next couple of years, you're going to see all these stereotypical, like traditional finance companies, like jumping into the space so much that in 5 years, it's not TradFi, DeFi, crypto. It's just finance, right? It's
Right.
just different rails and new rails and more efficient rails. And so it's really cool to see like traditional finance companies, these old school banks getting into the space. And I know some of the like old school crypto folks don't love it. Like, but I think, let's make this tent as big as possible, make this party as big as possible. We all have a role to play. Like, let's welcome in the big banks, Wall Street, and help innovate in this space. And there are smart folks there. Let's build something great.
It's such an interesting dichotomy because, I've been in crypto for almost 10 years now, and you hear like we need institutional investment. And once the institutions are in, we're going to be golden. Well, they're going to come in with the financial products that they know. They're just not going to invest in all the crypto stuff. They're going to bring in their own expertise and their own financial products. So it's a weird dichotomy that we have to balance is, yes, we need the capital, but the capital is also going to look like what they're familiar with, which as I think some of the crypto industry has a tough time with.
Yeah, for sure. I think like we'd always say this in litigation. Like if you have a settlement that's great, it means both sides are like a little unhappy, right? You can live with this, it's good, but I'm kind of upset about that. And maybe that's like in life in general. You're never perfectly happy. Like you might want to go to Chipotle, your kids want to go to McDonald's, and you maybe balance it out here and there. And I think in crypto, like the OGs are pure like libertarian, Bitcoin, hands off. Like you might never love like Wall Street coming in and innovating new products, and Wall Street may have similar visions and fears about the other side, but just make the party as big as possible. We can all contribute in certain ways. You might not love everything, but that's life. Like I'm my favorite sports team. Sometimes they trade my favorite player, Luca, but I still am a big fan of the Dallas Mavericks, even though they traded my favorite player away. So,
Well, it'll just be you and the three other people that are in the stands that
yeah,
watching the game.
Tickets will be cheaper then, I guess. So.
And it's interesting because I come from the compliance lens, and crypto. A lot of the OGs are like, "Hey, we don't want to do KYC, and crypto it's supposed to be peer to peer, and it's transparent enough as it is. We don't need identification information." And it's like, just like probably when we're growing up, at least when I'm growing up, you can choose your own path. Do you want to stay libertarian or do you want to build a big business? You just can't choose both, unfortunately. So it's one of those interesting things. You mentioned earlier before we started recording about how you found out about Bitcoin, and I would love to know that story of like how you got bit by the Bitcoin bug. I'm assuming Bitcoin first, maybe other cryptocurrencies. Give us that insider origin story.
Yeah, well, it came from my dad, which is like kind of crazy because he's not what I would say is like tech forward kind of person. And ironically, he came to me in like 2012, 2013. Was like, Andrew, have you heard about this new website, YouTube? I was like, yeah, like YouTube's been around like 7 years. Like I've been watching music videos on YouTube 7 years, but he had just found YouTube. And, we all go through that, like the YouTube, like late night, like death spiral, rabbit trail, Zoom, whatever, like just keep on clicking videos. And he somehow ended up on like Bitcoin and he got it quickly. It started like investing some in Bitcoin in like 2012. He started telling me about it. I watched some of his videos he shared. I remember like 2013, I'm in my law firm office late at night, feeling the pain and the pressure. And I watched one of these videos and I was like, this is like fake internet money. What are you doing? This doesn't make any sense to me. And I so wish I had a time machine to go back to myself in 2013 at that night and be like, hey, let me just put like $100 into this thing and see what happens. But he was relentless. And every time we'd see him at like holidays and birthday parties for my kids, talk about Coinbase, talk about Bitcoin, talk about Ethereum. And finally, like 4 years later, I dug in deep, read some as much as I could, and clicked. And I was like, I get it. This is better form of money that's not controlled by like a couple of people in the federal government. It's controlled by the people. It can be peer to peer. This is cool. This is awesome. And so that's when the light bulb went on. That this is just a better way to do finance. And since that day, do as much as I can, like in the space, and ultimately led me to come to eToro because I want to just build more in the crypto space and as much as I can.
I love it. What was, was there a challenge or a blocker for you? Was it like, hey, legally they're never going to allow this to exist, the regular, like, what was the one thing, especially coming from a legal perspective, was there one thing that you were hung up on, even though you're like, hey, this is a great technology, there's no way the government's going to allow this? Was there any kind of blockers or challenges that you kind of
Yeah.
thought was going to be a deal breaker for the technology?
Yeah, for sure. Right. Like, because being a lawyer, like I know there's even in the security space, thousands of not just laws, but regulations, lawsuits, opinions, and just so much, right? And to be able to like a new technology coming out of nowhere to just blow all that open, and that's hard, right? But you read that like 7-page white paper and you're like, this is like, makes so much sense. It's so smart. So to me, the biggest block was just in my own head that this is like fake internet money. Getting over that was harder as opposed to like, hey, look, the regulations, the innovation that then was going to require more legislation. That's going to be tough. It's going to take a long time. We're like all in on this thing. And I know like I haven't vetted this, but I remember like years and years ago reading like when Ford started making automobiles, like people were like upset of like it not messing up the roads where horses go. And it's like the same kind of idea of like right now we're living in a world built on rails from the 20th century. Sometimes even one of the big banking laws in the U.S. is from 1863 and is still applied today. So that's tough to put 21st century technology on it, but there's a lot of smart people working in that space and it's going to happen. And it already certainly is.
I love it. You said you're based in DC. I would love to know kind of what is the temperature, especially since, Trump came into administration, not so much from a political vibe, but what is the temperature? Are there more conversations now about crypto and people being more accepting? Because it must be tough to build in an environment that could change every 4 years when you're at large institutions where it takes you 2 to 3 years to build these programs to begin with. And then you have to deal with the market cycles and the downturn in value and pricing and interest. What's the temperature you feel right now if you had to gauge it based on some of your conversation?
Super encouraging. It's like flipping a light switch on and off. Like it's that drastic, right? So I've been talking about Bitcoin and crypto in this area since 2017, right? And there's definitely times where people are like, "You're crazy," and say the same stuff I said. This is like fake internet money, and those people like are not saying the same things today, right? I'd love to like engage in like policy meetings, discussions, and eToro is a member of Digital Chamber of Commerce, who have done a tremendous job just advocating for these issues on Capitol Hill and also with regulators. And 3 weeks ago, they had their big DC blockchain summit packed to the gills. The whole thing is like packed and crowded and tons of politicians, I think importantly from both sides of the aisle, which is like amazing to see that this should be an apolitical issue. And it's now an issue that like people are talking about, taking seriously. And hopefully, I've been saying this since 2017, but hopefully we're going to see some legislation around the topic very, very soon.
And I think the pandemic gave us a lot of examples of where digital assets, especially we're in, a very westernized country, like in North America, it's like we can use Venmo, PayPal, like, we're not like obscure to the fact that we don't need digital assets on a day-to-day basis. But then it's like, hey, we want to, donate to the Ukraine maybe. Oh, can't do that through GoFundMe anymore because it's for military equipment. Or here in Canada, hey, we want to support the Freedom Convoy. Can't do that because now the government's calling every crypto exchange trying to get your account information. So I think the pandemic kind of escalated when we got more digitalized, why it is important to have that digitalized asset and that digital asset. But I'd love to hear more about eToro. Everyone, I think, knows about eToro, but they don't know the extent on probably the services and the financial products that you offer. Just like you say, Robinhood, it's like, oh yeah, I've heard Robinhood, seen them. But I wouldn't know exactly what they offer, etc. I would love to know, break down what eToro does and what like you're famous for internally, what the customers are running to you for versus maybe some of your competitors.
Yeah, I'd love to. Always love to share the eToro vision history because it's a wonderful one. So the company's been around 18 years. Our founders started because they're passionate about capital markets and breaking down barriers to investing. all around the world, right? We can take it for granted, especially maybe today in 2025 that, hey, let me like download an app and invest in, my favorite stock or crypto. But that certainly is not the case for everybody. That certainly wasn't the case for people back in like 2010, 2008, and this kind of time frame. So we're a multi-asset provider. So we're passionate about crypto. That's not all that we do, right? We're an OG in the space. We're the first regulated institution in Europe to offer Bitcoin trading. Our founder was at the very first Bitcoin conference when it was probably like more like a meeting, like so many years ago. And on his X feed, you'll see a post from 2011 where he's telling people to check out Bitcoin at 11 cents.
I
And
love
like,
it.
wow, like if you just had put $100 to that thing, your whole life, family's life is much different. So we're huge advocates of this space, but we're also passionate about people just having an option to invest in other asset classes as well. So for example, like in the US, we have crypto offering. We also have stocks, right? So maybe you're just investing in Bitcoin related stocks, but maybe you love Chipotle, so you invest in Chipotle. But of course, ETFs as well, a wonderful diversified like investment class. And we also have options trading for stocks in ETFs. And the hope is in the future, we'll have even more products available. And overseas, same kind of thing, multi-asset class, have futures in some places. And just love the idea of people coming to eToro and maybe they're new, maybe they're around 20 years and they have a lot of different options in front of them. But what we're most passionate about and most known for is this idea of social trading, right? And it's like kind of a novel term, especially here in the US. But look, life is better when we do it together, whether it's playing sports, hanging out with friends. So why not investing too? So you jump on eToro, maybe you don't know how to get started. We actually have a social media feed baked into our platform. So you can see people talking about investing, people sharing ideas, worries, fears, all that kind of stuff that's like so helpful along your investment journey, especially as you're just getting started. And so we love this idea of just a community coming together, investing together, sharing ideas. And we think that makes everybody better. There's wisdom in the crowd and power in the crowd and just more fun too. And so that's like our heartbeat and DNA, this idea of like community investing and social investing.
And that like looks a lot different than a bank, right? You go on their app, they're just, selling their mortgages and products and services, which is fine. But you never like imagine now how many people that eToro probably onboarded into different financial and asset classes, right? They're going on their stocks and they're saying, hey, like, what's this BTC I'm hearing people talk about investing in? And like, hey, like, I don't feel comfortable directly in the asset. This Bitcoin ETF looks pretty cool. Let me try. That's something I know about. I can put like maybe 5%. So it's interesting that you have that social aspect. How difficult is it to, because the whole sentiment, especially on like crypto Twitter, is that things change so quickly. How challenging is it for like eToro to make sure you have innovative financial products, but not go too far where it's just like a hype, like the metaverse and the NFTs or meme tokens, where your customers want it, but you maybe not want to expose them to that level of risk? Like, how do you guys balance that internally?
Yeah, great question. Compliance is the heart of everything we do, and we're very thoughtful and careful about every step we take. And look, by this time, we're not quite an OG. We've been around 18 years in this space, right? And there's a lot of companies probably who started after us and they've flamed out and are not here anymore because they probably took too many steps too soon, too much risk. So they sometimes maybe we're on the slower end, but I think it's trying to play the long game. And we want to be here and serve our customers for not just months or years, but like decades. We're constantly innovating internally, but a lot of times we'll build something and we just test it with employees for a while, or maybe we'll test it in some countries but not the others, because you want to innovate and do cool stuff that's new, but always the North Star is like customer protection and what's best for our customer. And if you got to wait 3 months, 6 months, 9 months to make sure that happens, that is absolutely always the right choice in our mind. So done a lot of innovating over the past couple of years, got a lot more cool things in the hopper, and hopefully in the next year or so, going to see it hit the public news.
I love it. Can you tell me a little bit about regulation, your thoughts on the current regulatory, especially in the US, stablecoin regulation? Multiple stablecoin acts are being considered, going through that like regulatory process. But also, like, I feel like eToro is very similar to how regulators have to be, right? They're not going to rush out and make regulation on something, and by tomorrow, that's no longer an issue or the technology's changed. They also have to kind of take a very intentful process, right? They can't go too quick, but they get, blamed for going too slow. What are your thoughts about regulation, especially now where the conversation is pointing a little bit more towards the US being, the crypto capital or the innovative, global powerhouse around the world?
Yeah, I think that's like a really interesting and nuanced approach, Stephen. People in our space, like a lot of times they like to bash the regulators, right? And just say all the bad stuff and the gossip. And I don't think that's always fair because, like you said, like, if you're a regulator sitting on one of these agencies, all of a sudden this new technology comes, and what you have at your disposal are securities laws from the 1930s, banking laws from the 1860s. Like that's hard to figure out, right? Now it's hard leading a firm and even being a lawyer at a firm advising. Like it's hard for the company, but it's hard for the regulator too. So I think there's probably been too much regulatory bashing in the last like 5 or 6 years, but we desperately need legislation, right? Because the regulators can only go so far. You got to have the law in place for then the regulators to regulate and confirm and customer activity around that law. When I started to get into the space in 2017, I had people ask like, well, what about this? What about that? And I'm like, soon we're going to have some legislation on this piece. And that's been 8 years, but I think this is going to be the year, right? Stablecoin legislation first. And that's going to give one, certainty to the industry, two, like certainty and encouragement to the firms that support the industry, whether it's like banks, clearing firms, because they need that certainty as well. And third, it gives the regulators a clear understanding of what the law is. Because to me, it makes no sense trying to stuff digital assets and peer-to-peer wallet transactions into laws from the 1930s. In a Supreme Court case about orange trees from 1946, like it just doesn't make sense. We need new laws on the books. Congress likes to fight a little bit. Not a lot of like legislation comes out, but I think we're finally like so close, and it's going to be such a massive win for not just the industry, but also consumers in the United States as well.
I love it. And it makes a lot of sense why regulators have to approach the industry. And the industry, we have to be somewhat self-responsible as well. We like to use certain words that we know aren't covered under the regulatory guise, even though we know we're not doing exactly that, right? Like, oh no, we're not a security, we're an ICO. Oh no, we're not, we're not a security, we're an NFT. We like to use very, cliche words to try and avoid regulatory scrutiny and regulatory requirements as well. But eToro has always kind of had this compliance, regulatory focus first. Do you feel like since you've always been playing by the rules for like the last decade, working with regulators at a state and federal level, that, what are your thoughts now that finally you get regulation that is, a little bit more innovative and friendly to the community? Do you feel like this is going to give you a competitive advantage? Or do you think it's like, hey, maybe we went too hard? Like, there's always that dichotomy of like, hey, we don't want to be the first one to put in all these things, but we definitely don't want to be the last one either. Do you feel like you have an advantage now because you've already done the hard work now that the regulation's turning more into the private sector's favor?
Yeah, so I think, the big win is that we're still here today. There's a lot of crypto firms are making a ton of money, 20, 21, 22, and they're not here today anymore. So I think we've like just surviving in the crypto space is a huge win because there's been a lot of booms and busts, and there'll certainly be more to come. So we're here and we're proud that we're here. And sure, there's probably times we could have been more aggressive and made a lot more money, but who knows what happens. So a North Star of doing right by the customers will always be there. We're always going to chase that. I think having those muscles in place, the compliance, the regulatory muscles will always be helpful, right? Whether you're like innovating quickly or slowly or somewhere in between, like got to go through that process. And being slower to launch may be tough and painful in some ways, but you're probably going to have less litigation, less regulatory stuff down the road. And so it's all maybe about like you having the pain and delay here or later, but the compliance first at all times, because I think that truly benefits the customers. But more clarity is going to be just so helpful to everybody because it's hard to lead a business and make decisions when you don't know what's going to happen like 6 months, 12 months. And it can't be subject to like an election every 4 years. It's going to be like a rapid change. That is the worst possible thing. And so I think that's where you got to have like legislation It's going to be there. And then in 90 years, people are going to be complaining about the 2025 crypto legislation is too old school, but I will happily take it today.
I love that. I love that aspect. Yeah, you're right. We want this to be long-standing, not like, hey, new administration, different side. Oh no, we're reverting back to 2022, 2023 versus what's happening now in 2025. Then that's why I asked you, like, how do you go through all these different market changes, regulatory changes? It looks like we're in a good direction, and it appears, I'm not in the US, but it feels like it's a little bit more of like a bipartisan approval of a lot of these things versus just like one side pushing it down the other side's throat.
Yeah.
I'm curious, you have over 40 million users. First of all, that's a lot. What are some of the financial crime concerns, or what are some of the legal concerns that you're like the top of mind, the priority as you go into work every day is like, hey, we have to make sure that we're mitigating this risk?
Yeah, look, I think like for any financial firm, the like two things that are going to knock you out quicker than anything are like AML issues and cybersecurity, right? You cannot run a financial business in a successful, thoughtful, healthy way, and if those are not priorities, and those are certainly priorities for eToro, right? And then just making sure like our business, our staff, our customers are protected as much as possible, and we don't have shady folks using our platforms to do unfortunate things around the world. Certainly a complicated and challenge at times because especially we're in 75 countries, right? Now, eToro US isn't serving all 75 countries, though we got regulated institutions all around the world serving customers in those areas. And so we see a lot, but also we learn a lot too. One of the best things about being in such a large company around the world is like we learn stuff in the US, we share it with our partners and friends in Europe or Asia and vice versa. It's amazing, like almost like scientific experiment of seeing what works in some places and share it, and what doesn't work and share that news too. But we definitely see a lot of issues, but we're always have compliance first. AML and cyber, those are always going to be like at the very top of the list because those are things that can knock you out quicker than just about anything.
And we're seeing cybersecurity, especially with a lot of the DPRK hackers coming out. They're attacking infrastructure like oil in the US. They're definitely attacking exchanges with what we saw recently with Bybit hack. Sony Productions got a taste of the Lazarus Group, to the point where they had to like go down the street to use a coffee shop's fax machine because everything was pretty much shut down. So we see that, that's the things that are going to put you out of business. I'm curious though, because you guys were the first like social investing platform where like me as a user could copy the strategies of other traders. I feel like that was revolutionary at the time. Maybe even from a legal aspect, I'd love to know your thoughts. Was there like significant risks involved in like deploying such a game-changing feature as part of your platform?
Yeah, so something like that does not always fit cleanly in the regulatory structure wherever you're at. In the US, we don't have the full capability launched yet, but hopefully at some point we will for this reasons. We don't want to surprise anybody, right? And so we want to like talk about these kind of things with regulators in advance, but certainly my peers overseas, this is something they've thought about a ton, and you go to lawyers, compliance experts, but also proactive regulatory discussion is something we are like, it's a huge tenet of what we do here because we don't want to surprise anybody. Don't want to surprise the regulators. That's not good for them, not good for customers, not good for us. So always being proactive and thoughtful as much as possible. Copy trading, it's a brilliant idea, right? Like for new investors, the hardest thing to figure out is how do I start? There's a million articles and videos out there, and we have a proud library of a lot of those resources that are trying to help as much as possible. But something that's a cool idea of like, hey, I look at this lady, this guy, and they're like super successful. And I can actually look at eToro and see their performance, their risk, their holdings, and I like their vibe. Let me just like put $100 and do exactly what they do. And I'm cool with that. Like, what a great idea. Is it for everybody? No, but certainly for some people, and it helps people get started and it doesn't cost anything, right? So like, the same kind of world exists in hedge funds and investment managers, but you might have to show up with like a $5 million check. And you might have to pay them 1-2% a year of your assets under management. But here it's like nothing. And I think that's like really powerful. And I think that idea is going to catch on more and more, especially here in the US, because it is a powerful tool for retail investors that we're excited to just continue to push.
And is there any benefit or incentive for those being copied? Are like they trying to build a brand on your platform and then maybe selling auxiliary services like consulting, or is there any benefit for them other than being like admired by the other 40 million users?
Yeah, so in not in the US, but globally, how the approach is that these people who are copied are what we call popular investors, and they go through like certifications and there's different assessments and checks, and they can actually earn money. And eToro pays them out of our pocket. The users aren't paying, but we'll pay them like a small percentage of the total assets. And that might be a side hustle for people. That might be the full-time job, but these are like smart people who do well. And, if they don't do well, then people don't follow them anymore, don't copy anymore. And that's, I think, the real power there is like that wisdom of the crowd, whereas like I can look at your portfolio, see your performance, see your risk, see what you're investing in, but also see the kind of stuff you're talking about. And I can decide with my dollars, I want to follow you or someone else or just do my own thing.
And I love that because, we see a lot of these Instagram rich traders. They're never flashing the eToro platform. And this is probably why, because they're faking, how much they've made. And they can't, put out the eToro showing their exact bank account, who's following them, what they're doing. You offer so many different things. You talk about stocks, ETFs, crypto, commodities, indexes or indices. What's been popular over the last 3 years? Has it just been digital assets? Has there been other things that people aren't talking about because it doesn't make the same headlines that like Bitcoin spot ETFs do?
Yeah. So, eToro US specifically, we launched in 2019. It's crypto only, right? So that's like our bedrock. And we saw 100% of our customer activity was only in that space. 2022, we launched a broker dealer where now our existing customers, new customers could buy stocks and ETFs. Later that year, we launched options trading, right? So we have this nice diversified portfolio. I think given our history, it's a lot is crypto, right? But now stocks, ETFs are catching up. I'd say it's maybe not quite 50-50, but it's a nice, robust balance, which I think is like super helpful. And I think it's the best thing probably an investor could do, right? Like have a diversified portfolio. Like I love Bitcoin. I think one day it's going to be $1 million, maybe 10 million when I'm like really, really old. But I'm not going to put all my money in Bitcoin because you want to, have a diversified portfolio of ETFs and stocks as well. So crypto, definitely a big percentage of what we see, but the typical like techie stocks, super popular as well. The Teslas of the world, Nvidias, Apples, that's a lot of activity there, but also a lot of ETFs, right? It's wonderful to see like people just buy into like plain vanilla S&P 500 ETFs. I think that's like critical and Warren Buffett, that's his whole thing. Like put your money in there in 20 years, you're going to beat everything else. So it's cool to see a lot of our customers doing the like more edgy, exciting stuff like Bitcoin and then maybe like a mining stock, Bitcoin mining stock, but also they're like just buying the, plain old ETFs as well. And I think that's cool to see that people just spreading their money and doing as best they can.
And it's funny because like even investing in Bitcoin seems like, traditional to compare to like the meme tokens and, the version the tokens being offered by exchanges and NFT projects. Like Bitcoin's kind of like the S&P now where it's like, oh, that's what you're doing, Bitcoin. Even though if you just bought and left it in there, you would have reached the same exact consensus as probably Warren Buffett did.
Yeah. That makes me feel old now thinking about that. And I like Bitcoin. It's kind of the old variable in some ways.
Yeah, we're boomers now. We're the boomers of investing.
Well, no, I'm barely, but I'm technically a millennial, like just barely. So I'm like always always makes my heart happy when a lot of we do all these like surveys and about retail investors, and it's technically a younger investor just by like a year. But as long as I can, I'm gonna hold on to that.
I'm on the outer edge. Like, my birthday was a couple months later. I'd be like out of the conversation. So I feel like when I was watching TV, it was the converter was still attached to the TV by a cable. And there was only 13 buttons. So
for sure,
kind of strange now seeing everything being digitalized.
Yeah.
I'm curious, is there anything outside of your comfort zone, risk appetite? Like I know, whether it's cannabis or, ethical, investing, is there anything that's not within your scope when it comes to risk or that you just don't do for maybe lack of internal expertise when it comes to compliance, etc.?
Yeah, not because of like compliance. We got an incredible compliance regulatory team, right? It's the heart of everything that we do. But like again, we are not. I wouldn't say we're slow, but we're thoughtful, right? So there's some stuff that we don't do today, but I think in the future we will. And I think it's all just about timing and being thoughtful as possible. But we're big believers of people having freedom, right? As long as you're not hurting other people in some kind of dangerous way. But whether you want to invest in some risky stock, right? Like that's for you to decide what's best in your family, or risky crypto, like that's on you as a user. We want to provide a safe and especially like transparent platform where people can do that, but also learn from each other. It's something said a couple comments ago about the Instagram influencer like types. Like, man, it's been so many late nights scrolling. You see these people in their like Ferraris and Lamborghinis and these like very vague references to investing and take my course and this, and you go these rabbit holes. Like this, none of this feels legit. What I love about eToro, like, if I see like you post on eToro, like, hey, buy stock X, I made Y on this, like I can look at your portfolio and see you actually own that stock and you've had it for a while and you've earned 70% on it. And that transparency is like so valuable, especially I know like you're on an eToro platform where there's KYC, where there's AML checks. So this is a real human being, right? Whereas like so many people are going to like anonymous forums and they're seeing the flashy bills being thrown around and the Ferraris, and you're like, that person could just be a complete manipulator, scam artist. We got no idea, but people get sucked into that. And the huge value of eToro is that transparency and legitimacy. I think I don't know, it's like really important.
Yeah, and then you see the lawsuit later on, and you're like shocked. Oh, you're shocked. That's the person that was taking the private jet, and they were selling a $500 course, and claiming to make $10 million a day. Didn't do it legitimate.
Yeah,
Didn't do it legitimately when they have no business, no employees, and it's just them with a wad of cash next to their ear as they drive around Miami. But I'm not even knocking it. I love nice cars too, but I've never seen so many people smoking a cigar with cash and a beautiful woman in a car, and that is what they're posting. Like, okay, like, and how would you do the rest of the day?
Yeah,
like, give us some more insights. When did you do your dishes and do your laundry? That's what I need to know as a father. Like, when did you take a nap? When did you get your nap in today?
Yeah, I feel that.
But speaking especially, talking about millennials and boomers and the generation, give me the lay of the land of like recreational retail investors. Like, where are we at now? What is, the recreational retail investor investing in? Is there huge discrepancies between age? You probably, with 40 million users, you probably have one of the best data sets to answer this question on the podcast.
Yeah, super passionate about data. And we're looking at that all the time, not just with our own data, but we do these quarterly surveys, a retail investor beat, where we're going to thousands of investors directly, asking them, topics of the day, right? Whether it's politics, tariffs, things of this nature. So I think the most encouraging thing, especially this past month or two of just up and down every day, it's tiring, like I was hoping for a boring 2025 in markets, but it's not been boring. But what I think the most important trend is that retail investors are resilient, tough, and they're like optimistic, right? And so we're not seeing retail investors be like, this is too crazy, I'm done, I'm out. If anything, we're seeing more buying activity during the past couple months. And I think that shows that retail investors are not the dumb money that Wall Street and others kind of like to see them as. Like, they're smart, they're opportunistic, right? So if you're a retail investor today, you lived through the financial crisis and then you saw markets rally, you lived through COVID, then it crashed and you saw markets rally, like, wow, stuff is going down a lot these couple months. My favorite stocks, like I could get them on sale. I could get them at a discount because I'm a believer in these companies. I'm going to hold them for a while. And I think that's the most important trend. People are not running away. They're seen as a good buying opportunity. As in one of our surveys, we found, I think 73% of retail investors during the last couple months of all this political drama, tariff drama, are either buying or holding. They're not selling. And I think that's really cool to see. It shows people are growing up and they're thinking long-term. And I think that's really valuable. In terms of the names you see, it's like mentioned before, so, a lot of the tech, the Magnificent Seven that people are really focused on. And they've seen the most growth in the past like 10 years. In the last couple months, they've hit the biggest drops. And so if you're a big believer in Meta, Nvidia, Amazon, Apple, and you use these products every day, and now prices are down 20, 30%, but you're all in on it, like this is, for a lot of people, like that's a good opportunity to buy, and definitely seeing that in the data as well.
Are they people still taking like these laddered approach? I know when I was early on in financial services, the dollar cost averaging, are people still taking these tried and true approaches? Or do you think it's a little bit more speculative, a little bit more erratic, or, very sentiment, right? Versus like, hey, I'm always going to put in a certain amount every month, regardless of what's happening in the industry.
Yeah, I think that dollar cost averaging is absolutely still there, which I think is brilliant. I think it's the best way to do it. That's what I did my whole life. My grandfather got me into investing as a little kid, and like just putting $50 a month here and there. And over time that helped me like pay for law school, pay for an engagement ring, pay for a house. It's like, I am a huge believer of that. eToro, we've got like recurring deposit program to help people do just this. But at the same time, I think there is an increase of the like market news response, market sentiment response. And I see that as like an investor myself, when I see some stocks, like when the DeepSeek news came out, like beginning of the year, and it's just like something doesn't seem right about this, where this amazing AI program was built in like 6 weeks with like $5 million, and all the AI stocks are getting hit a ton. I'm like, that seems like a buying opportunity to me, because that news doesn't quite feel right. And at the same time, like in the last couple of months, like, a lot of tariff noise and drama and market volatility, like eventually this is going to get worked out. It's tough, it's painful, but if you're a big fan of Chipotle or whatever the stock is, you're like, it's down 20%. I think there's definitely an increase of these people who are like passionate about these products, like just buying more when it's cheaper, right? Just like you would if you go to like Costco or Sam's Club, right? And it's cheaper, so you can buy things in bulks.
Buy more and hold on to it until you use it, right?
Exactly. That's like this kind of moment for people, and a lot of them are taking that approach, which I think is like cool to see. The worst thing you could do is get scared, sell, you're out. Now, if you need that money for whatever reason, yes, do that. But if you're a long-term investor, like it's not a good time to sell is when things are down.
I think that Costco analogy, this is not financial advice, but I think that Costco analogy is definitely a great one, and that resonates with a lot of people. Like when the protein powder's on sale, you buy it even if you don't need it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And probably some other thing. I'm curious. We were producing a podcast for Chainalysis last year, talking to Chen Yi, who was former regulator in Asia, now at Chainalysis is their policy person. And she talked about there being a test, like almost like an assessment test based on, a person's understanding of investment in Asia before they could invest in things. And I know, many people are against certain rules and regulations in the US around like private investors and being an accredited investor. What are your thoughts? Should we be doing a little bit more, making sure that our customers, our users are educated? Or it's like, what are your thoughts on that? Or does this apply maybe for more traditional products versus some of these other products that don't have a whole bunch of disclosures anyway? And, people are just investing on a whim.
Yeah, I love this question. All right. So my reaction is fan of disclosures, not a fan of gatekeepers, right? It's all I kind of dig into those. Like I'm passionate about disclosures. One of my dreams in my life is to be the first financial company to have like fun and cool disclosures. I used to be a rapper in a band, so I love music. And so like, I want musical disclosure somewhere. That's an option people can choose. That like, I can read this horrible disclosure, or I can have somebody rap it to me. And AI is going to be a way to do it. So all about clear, fun, engaging disclosures that people actually read, right? And that's something that often doesn't happen. So I think that is so important. I worry about this idea of like gatekeeping folks, right? Because I think one of the harshest things in US finance is that the best way that people can like make stratospheric money, big opportunities, like investing in like pre-IPO companies, right? So you might be a huge fan of some company, but unless you know the right people, have all these requirements satisfied, you have no shot, right? But the VCs and other big investors, they're the ones that can put millions and turn it into tens of billions. And normal people don't have that access. So I never want to create like more barriers to that. right? Of like, hey, this is a riskier investment, so you got to satisfy all these like different checks, because I think that will have a downstream effect that is bad for the wealth gap that is already too big today. I love the idea of like more disclosures, and actually not just more, but like fun disclosures, unique disclosures. In the world today, like you can sign up for stocks and ETFs and crypto trading, but if you want to do options, there is a higher standard, right? I think
Right.
that's okay in some ways, but not like not too high. We don't want to, want people to start investing. If you have hurdles there, it makes it too challenging. But let's go all in on fun disclosures and wrapper disclosures. Let's mind your
I'm down. And does it make sense that the regulators are putting so much onus on disclosures when nobody's reading? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Should we be using AI? Is there an AI tool that we can pop these 40-page disclosures in and say, hey, what are the key things I need to worry about? And they like visualize that, like, hey, if you do this, this will happen. Hey, like this type of financial product, these are some of the, downfalls we've seen in other parts of the industry. Like, where can we get this? Like, where can we synthesize these disclosures so people actually get the gist of it versus not reading it at all and being more at risk?
Stephen, man, it sounds like a business plan we should work on.
An AI wrap. We just put an AI wrapper with your wrapping around the AI wrapper, and we're good to go.
Yeah, because I think that's a great idea of, hey, here's this 40-page agreement. Give me the 10 top things here, right? I mean, of course, today people could copy paste it, drop it in a chat GPT and get that kind of output. But I love that idea of like, let's surface something within the product where people have that option. Ironically, regulators would probably say like, oh, then you're just trying to like not show them everything. So it's this interesting tension where you want to give people all the information that's there, but if it's too much, it's of no value. Like I know when I'm as a former lawyer and as someone who like loves disclosures, anytime I bought a house, I don't read anything. I just sign. And so I'm a little hypocritical on this, but yeah, I love the idea. At least the old school version, I was like, let's have like the normal agreement. There's a button where if you want it like sung to you or something that's that, or pictures, maybe it's like an AI like summary, right? You still got to accept the main agreement, the main terms, but as an add-on, got some kind of little AI shortcut, music or not.
Yeah, like animation maybe with you rapping in the background and just like a little stick man that walks you through like, hey, if you don't, this is disclosure, this is the clause. We're really just looking for clauses at the end of the day. We're not reading everything. We just want to know, like, is there an issue with IP or patents or, any among many other things. We talked a little bit about baby boomers. There's this concept going around, especially in North America, about the great wealth transfer that, refers to the movement of wealth assets from the baby boomers to the younger generation. Unfortunately, like I'm of the age that my grandparents like didn't have anything to really leave our family. And maybe my parents have built up enough, inheritance and wealth that they can do so. And we're seeing even the younger generation, definitely their parents have, a lot more wealth. What are your thoughts about, this wealth transfer? What should people be looking out for? What are things that, hey, if you do get this transfer, that you're thinking like, hey, these are areas that you should think about, whether it's investing or preserving that wealth?
Yeah, so I think this is going to be in our lifetimes like the third biggest like monumental moment we've seen in finance. I think first is online trading, online banking. Whether it's E-Trade starting online trading or the fact direct deposit happening. I remember as a kid, like my mom and dad would get a paycheck from, my dad was a UPS driver, and he'd get his paycheck and have to go to the bank to deposit it. Everything going online is number one. Number two, the big moment I think is the blockchain development. And we're still living it, still kind of in that weird in between. That's number two. Number three is this monumental transfer of wealth from very, very different generations and lifestyles. One of my greatest blessings in my life is that I lived in that era before the internet. And I lived in that era while it was like a new thing. Like in high school, AIM's coming out. And I so much cherish that opportunity to live before mobile internet technology saturated every single thing we do. But the folks who are older enough,
where we ran home and, see who's online and then like try to message as many people and then telling us to pay just 911 if we should call them from a payphone.
Take me back to that era. I'm good. Take
with
me back.
With the Napster playing in the background and the little wavy
Yeah,
equalizer.
But you have now, so we're like kind of in the middle, right? People above us, so they live most of their lives without the internet. People like below us, younger, they don't know this pre-internet blockbuster kind of world, right? So what we're going to see is like 2050 estimates are like $80+ trillion are going to move from the older generation down. Maybe it's to us, maybe it's to our kids. And what that is like that $80+ trillion of dollars today, or, a lot of it's in housing and things like this, but investing, it's largely in people walking into a branch office, meeting with their financial advisor quarterly, once a year, who are recommending bonds and mutual funds. $80 trillion are coming down to people who they don't know that world. The world is like picking up their phone, clicking a few apps and investing, putting whether it's a bank account, crypto, stocks, ETFs, NFTs, sports cards on eBay. That is a massive moment. And if I was at a firm that lived and thrived on that traditional office model, come meet with your financial advisor, I'd be freaking out. Like, we have to be ready for this, because I know, like, in my own life, I have zero desire to go meet in person with a financial advisor. No chance on earth my kids are ever going to do that. And so firms got to be ready. Mobile technology or whatever that new technology is in like 2049, which is like a little scary to think about. Be ready for that transfer, because it is going to completely change what people are investing in. The entire model is going to change. Stuff that's not even invented yet could be the big thing in like 2041 that then trillions of dollars is being poured into. So it'll be interesting to like see. Hopefully I'm still around to see it, but definitely intrigued to see how that all plays out. But
and that traditional way was always very excruciating, right? Like, and there was not a lot, I wouldn't say fraud, but like they're putting you on front load fees. You know nothing about that.
Yeah.
You got a little change from your employer. They send you to their main provider. They're putting you in stuff that, only they offer and they get the biggest fees for. It wasn't very consumer focused. I think I'm allowed to say that across the industry. And even to this point, I remember, a few years ago, I wanted to take my retirement and put it in Bitcoin back, investments I was allowed to do in my retirement. And even that process was like, oh, that's not a good idea. You have to go in there. Like, it wasn't like, oh yeah, I can just click a button. It was like, whatever we offer, you're going to stay within that. We're only going to advise you on what's in that offering, versus like, hey, like, if I'm on your platform, I can see there's a plethora of things I can touch and easily move around. And I think that's what, you're going to have to do with these newer generations. They don't have time to go in and listen to your spiel about, the thing that you're making the highest percentage kickback on.
Absolutely. And those barriers to entry are just like collapsed. It is beautiful. Yeah. And I know plenty of people who work at those firms. They're brilliant and they love their customers. And I just think that model is not going to be the model that survives, right? Like paying that person 1% of whether it goes up or down, right? Versus even in the advisory space, they have robo advisors now, like 0.25%. So you save like a lot of money on that. Or I could just research and do stuff on my own. And even like it's crazy. Like 5 years ago, if you wanted to buy a stock, you needed to buy the full share. You had to pay like $8 to buy it, $8 to sell it. So that's completely inaccessible to someone who just has $50. Like, I'm just trying to buy $50 of Tesla or Chipotle or whatever it is. I can't, because I don't have enough money for full share. Two, I got to pay $16 just to go in and out, and any profit is gone. And just overnight, that whole world went away, which I think is...
I think you're at that same stage of me. The conversations are different versus back then. It's like, you're not going to tell people about investment because they'd have to go to the bank, they have to talk to somebody, you'd have to get, KYC. Now it's like, oh, like, just open up this app, download it. Like, hey, look at what I'm doing. Look what other people are doing. Oh yeah, let's go invest. Like, my friends are coming up to me like, hey, I put $100 in Bitcoin. Is that cool? I'm like, those are the conversations you had even like 3 to 5 years ago. Those weren't the conversations you were having at a barbecue or a cookout or, hanging out with friends where they can just flip open their phone and do it right then and there while you're talking about it, versus having to go through this process of finding a financial advisor. So it's interesting how quickly things have changed. I'm curious, is there any data points like around what the younger generation are investing or what you're seeing? Like, hey, we see an uptick with certain ages. They really love this asset. Or like, hey, even the older generations, they're starting to venture into where some of these younger generations are investing in as well.
Yeah, well, across the board, crypto ownership is going up, right? I think in the last 4 or 5 years, the percentage of holdings like doubled, right? Which is encouraging and exciting, I think, to see people, everyone of all ages adopting new asset class. Absolutely, though, Generation Z is going even harder into like crypto and also individual stocks. We've seen, especially during this past era, I think Gen Z has increased their stock holdings by like 40%, crypto holdings by around 30%, which is exciting to see. And a lot of it's focused on the like tech names. Some of the older folks, I guess I'm here, like millennial, Gen X, there's more shift to like bonds. I'm not there yet, right? That sounds like something my granddad would do, but there's definitely like, I think as the older folks, unsurprisingly, more like bonds and commodities, but overall, more people are doing crypto, but also stocks. And I think that's super powerful. In the US, only 58% of people have any stock exposure, right? And that includes your 401k. I think the percentage of people who've actually done what you said about the barbecue and like logged in and bought a stock is like 20%, right? And I think it's important that that number goes up across the board, regardless of the age, because people being thoughtful with their money, trying to build a better life. I think that's thinking long term. I think that's good no matter what. If it's Nike or Chipotle or Tesla, like just people having that mindset of investing, I think is really powerful, and love to see that number one day to be 100. And when people hang out with their friends, it's not just talking about movies and sports, but they're talking about capital markets as well.
Yeah, they're talking about fantasy now. They're investing, whether it's gambling or in
Yeah.
financial products. They're doing a lot more investing in speculative things. Like you can't go through a game without like, hey, let's bet on the coin toss. And
Crazy.
that is, short form content. We'll do that, get you excited about those
Yeah.
things. I'm curious, I went on your LinkedIn profile. You have 4 adorable children. 3 out of 4 were smiling in that picture, which for any parent, if you can get those kind of batting averages, I think you're in business. I'm curious, what does it look like for them? What are your thoughts? Like, what lessons will you try to instill with them and their, kids their age and, other children? Because I think it's not just about look at all the cool things we can invest in. It's also like, hey, like these kids are punting real estate. Like they're punting investing in a home. They're just saying, scratch that, punt that. I can't afford it. So why even bother? Let me save that $50,000 I'd invest in a down payment and let me just maybe rent or splurge or move, become a digital nomad. Are there any other trends that you're seeing that you want to be like, hey, kid, start looking at these things? Because this is going to be the norm soon, where everyone's moving to Colombia and paying, $200 for rent and partying 24/7.
Yeah. All right. So I'm really passionate about this topic. It's crazy to me that people go through high school and never learn about investing. You learn about Pythagoras theorem and all this geometry. It's like, okay, this stuff's important. No offense to the math nerds. Like it's important, but like no talks about like budgets, investing. So really passionate about this idea. And it syncs with my own DNA. I'm like, I'm not the technical analysis guy and studying research reports. Like I love to invest in companies that I love myself. And I think that message really resonates with my old kids a lot. Like my son is like me as a like 5th grader. He loves Jordans, loves Nikes. Like that's his whole thing, like basketball, Jordans, Nikes. So when I tell him like, hey, we were actually owners of Nike, like this much, we actually own Nike, right? I think that like really resonates. Same thing with like Chipotle is the one place all my kids like and eat. And sometimes we'll like go through the line and I have my reward, like boom, I saved $8. Let's invest at $8 in Chipotle instead. Not like tangible real life examples I think are really helpful. What I did last fall, I actually had like a family investing contest where everybody got $50, picked whatever. It was all in my eToro account. Everyone got to pick like their favorite stocks. Kids don't know about ETFs, but that was a possibility. Stocks, ETFs, crypto. After like, I think it was like a month, maybe 6 weeks, measured performance. And the kids got like really into it. And I won, which I was excited about. And I was like a little nervous because I can't have my 5-year-old.
Yeah. They'll start questioning your whole idea.
Yeah.
He turns into the new head of eToro US.
Yeah. But they got like super into it and they're excited. Like the 5-year-old, like he went all in on Tesla because he loves cyber trucks. And so it like tickled him. We thought it was so cool. Like we own like Tesla. which was like really cool to see. And they got really into it. To spice it up, we had ChatGPT like pick 5 stocks and as well. And it actually came in fifth place. So like it was, don't turn everything over to AI quite yet, but I just love this idea. I love the idea of anybody going from consumers to owners, whether you're a kid, you're 40, you're 80, there's something powerful of like, I actually own part of these companies that I love. I think that message has never really, I don't really like been out there a lot, but that's what capital markets are. You invest with your dollars and vote with your dollars to the companies you love and think they're going to be successful. And I think there's something cool of like, hey, like I own part of like Nike. And so then when I go buy Jordans, I feel like, hey, I'm supporting myself. It's a good excuse, you know?
Yeah, it's a good excuse on the 100% markup. We're making that's money in our pocket, in our pocket.
Yep, exactly.
As well. I have 3 things to say about that. First, I think that's such a cool idea, and I would love for you to like create a fun little outline that we can share with people. Like, hey, this is what we did. This is how you do it. So I think that would be fun. Like family, like we're always looking for something fun to do with the kids, and able to teach them about money. And I think that's such an interesting concept that people can do for fun. Maybe the eToro marketing team could be like, hey, let's roll this out, like family fun investment night. And there's like a little template of what you need to do. And I think that would be fun to compare against other families. This is what I remember my teacher, Mr. Workley. I remember we're in a portable, and this is what we all got to do. We all got to pick a penny stock. We didn't invest in it, but we all got to say, like, this is what we pick. For 3 weeks, you get to either buy, sell, and it was so fun. Every day they put the leaders on top of the board and explain percentages. And, you don't see that anymore. You don't see the teachers, I think, investing that amount of time. And like, to their credit, like the fact that they were able to make it through the pandemic, like, I don't think I'd want to try to homeschool, 20 kids in different homes.
Yeah, sure.
But we don't see that kind of investment fun way of including that. Even when we're teaching things like fractions, you don't see that anymore. And then I'm curious is like, we have seen, probably your kids similar to mine, they have their favorite people on YouTube, right? They have their influencers they see. We haven't seen great investment opportunities with influencers. Like, hey, if I like Prime or I like Logan Paul, it's like, okay, they create NFT, everyone got rugged. Like, there hasn't been, or like, okay, I like Hot to a Girl, she's so funny, everyone gets rugged. There hasn't been a like, hey, you can invest in my brand properly and, be a part of me. Or have you seen anyone doing that from like the influencer space? Or is it more CPG? Like, hey, if you love me, you'll love my lipstick. And all of a sudden now Kylie's a billionaire.
Okay, another good business idea. Let's do it. Because, yeah, my kids are obsessed with Danny Go, which I've never seen that, like crazy music videos, and that Dude Perfect. And you're right. I've never seen like
the Dude Perfect game. To be quite honest, it's a really good game.
Right. Their videos are amazing. I'm like, how do I enjoy Dude Perfect myself and get into this career? But yeah, there's not a lot of like, I can't think of any like YouTubers focus on finance who have that kind of vibe, like kid friendly, like looking at investing as like a life and not just like flashing the bills and Ferraris or the boring technical analysis. Maybe there's a space for that. I think it'd be helpful.
Maybe that's you, man. That like, if I had to pick anyone like that brings some life to this and has such like, I could just tell. I think we said the pre-call, like, you just bring an energy to what you do. You message me like right away, like, hey, excited to come on the podcast. I'm like, no guest ever messages me before we actually do the recording. And I'm looking at your profile. You're just excited about everything. It's funny because I think I saw your profile because I was like zooming in on the pic that you had with your daughter. I'm like, do they still sell like vanilla and chocolate Girl Guide cookies? I see all these different variations and like nobody likes mint. Like, I need someone to be selling.
Did you say no
vanilla, half chocolate Girl Guide cookie, door to door again? Because that's what I need in my life on the days that I need a cheat meal.
Did you say nobody likes Thin Mints? Because
that's the one. I'm like, that and mint ice cream. Y'all can bring that. That might be a one-off, but that's where I draw the line.
That's awesome. That's cool. All right. Yeah, that's great. Like I love the idea of let's make finance fun. It is one of the most important topics of any human's life, whether you care or not. Even something as discrete as interest rates, you could try to ignore it, but it has such a big impact on all of our lives. So people need to know more about it, engage with it. And the best way to do that, I think, is make it fun and not scary and not shady. So definitely passionate about that idea. It's
And I think the
critical.
kids get, when our mortgage interest rates go up, it's like, you went from multigrain Cheerios to like grain O's.
Yeah.
Because
Very well.
we buy name brand everything now
That's
with
great.
our mortgage doubling. Last thoughts. What does eToro have going on? What are you excited about going into the industry? We got to bring you back on maybe to talk about real world asset tokenization, because I know that's a huge topic now. Or maybe you could give me a 2-minute, like your thoughts on that space, because that's one of those interesting spaces that's combining the boring stocks and bonds with like, hey, but on the blockchain.
Yeah. Think back to an early part, in 5 years, there's not DeFi, TradFi. It's just finance. And I think everything is going to be tokenized, everything on the blockchain. So if suddenly you're super excited about Nike and I'm less excited, I can send you my Nike shares directly rather than through an exchange, all these intermediaries. And I can do it on Friday night, Saturday morning. We're hanging out at the barbecue. We're making a YouTube video right then and right there. And I think that's going to be how stocks will work. I think that's how it's going to be. Maybe even like real estate transactions, bonds, treasuries. There's definitely cool companies doing cool stuff in this space. And that's the future. And it's all about just breaking down the barriers. To me, it's crazy that like I can't buy a stock that you own from you. I can't. It's not how it works. And I can only do it during certain windows of time. And it's time for those kind of barriers to die, because we just need to break down the barriers and make things more accessible and easier, and hopefully engaging and fun along the way.
And it's got to be the 24/7 aspect, right? If we're at a cookout on a Saturday and you can't do anything, it's kind of like, it would be fun, but you can, buy an NFT. You can, invest in a rare token on a, subpar exchange halfway around the world. Those are the things. Anything last about eToro, what you guys are working on, any announcements that you can share?
Yeah, nothing I can share publicly, especially as a 15-year lawyer. I know how that goes, of course. And I've told people the same thing, but we're definitely working on some cool stuff, right? We're always going to innovate, but we're always going to innovate thoughtfully and carefully and always have the customer's best interest in mind. So definitely, hopefully hitting the news in different places in the coming weeks and months. And we're here to stay, and we're here to do cool stuff in the crypto space, but also traditional finance. So whether you want to do just crypto, stocks, ETFs, options, a mix of all those things, we're going to be here to help people along their investing journey, whether it's day 1 or day 1,000.
I love it. Any AI conversations that you're having, like whether you're using it internally, like we mentioned ChatGPT, like how much does AI play a part in your personal or professional world?
Use it all the time. It's crazy. Like a year ago, once a week, now like 10 times a day. And not just like work stuff, just family stuff. Tell me the menu at this restaurant versus that restaurant, and kids' parenting strategy. Like, how do I figure out how to relate to my 11-year-old who's too cool for school sometimes?
Yeah, that's most. How do you deal with that without getting whooped like we used to get whooped?
Yeah. So it is incredible how that's taking off, and we use it all the time in eToro behind the scenes to just do things smarter, faster, more efficient, especially overseas, rolling out different AI customer-facing tools and portfolios. So at least it's not time to hand over the keys completely to our AI overlords yet, but it's a tremendous tool that's going to just do tremendous things here in the next couple days, weeks, months, years.
It's a thinking partner, right? You can just literally bounce ideas off of it, come back with information, and it refines the way you ask questions and, you think about your approach. It's like before, like when we were at work, it's like, hey, have you thought about this before you submitted this report? And now it's like, hey, have you talked to ChatGPT before you sent it to me? Like, what did ChatGPT say?
Yeah.
Where's the best place for people to find you? I know you're active on LinkedIn. How do you get that on like crypto, Twitter, or other places?
Yeah, so somehow I've gone all my life without Twitter and X. I like spy on people's posts and everything. When I'm old school, still hang out on Facebook, and also like Instagram as well. But doing a lot on LinkedIn. In my old days, before I had so many kids, did a lot of YouTube videos in my band. So used to hang out on YouTube a lot, but not as much anymore.
I love it, man. You're super active. I think Twitter is probably why you're still glowing and laughing. I think if you spend too much time on Twitter, you lose that shine. Andrew, this has been one of my funnest conversations of 2025, or since we've been hosting this podcast. You just come with amazing energy, and you're focused on the next generation and how we can get them involved in not just like sports, but investing and just overall happiness, I think, is like, hey, how can we relate to our kid and get them excited about the things that we're working on, whether it's investment or just the technology itself, which is super cool.
Awesome. Well, Stephen, it's been a joy chatting with you. We got some cool business ideas we can chase in the future.
We got to flesh those out before the podcast airs.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thanks for the time.
Awesome.